Welcome to another live episode of Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means, that's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis. And this week, we're talking Heisman. We were going to do this anyway, but then Ohio State decided, everybody should talk Heisman. We were like, we know. I said, no. Everybody should talk about two players and only two players for the Heisman, and they both play for our teams. And so we said, okay, fine. We're also going to talk about the other people. We're doing our Heisman Trophy ballots. We don't have actual ballots. So I know the rules are if you have a Heisman Trophy ballot, you're not allowed to talk about your Heisman Trophy ballot until the Heisman Trophy race is over. We don't have to follow those rules. We can do whatever we want because our votes don't count in this election.
It's like, whose line is it anyway?
Yeah.
It's all made up, and the Buckeye Talk points don't matter for the Heisman.
Yeah. They matter in some other things. Do you guys vote in other awards?
No.
Oh, so it's just me. Never mind.
I don't think so.
Bragging. Okay.
I can say whatever I want.
I can vote in like 4 other awards. I already know who I'm voting for with one of them. It's the Ballot. I'm literally just going to put Ohio State player number 1, Ohio State player number 2, and then put one of the Tennessee players and call it a day. I mean, you guys have been watching
the
college
USC
football.
Player. I'm not telling you how to vote, but
I think I'm going to put the Ohio State player number 1, Ohio State player number 2, and the Tennessee player number 2. I mean, number 3, yeah. Buckeye Lemon's good. He's not better than those 3 guys. And then that's all due respect to what he's been able to do this year. He's not better than those 3 guys. But we're not here to talk about the blunt in the call for. We're here to talk about the Heisman Trophy and putting our ballots together. And just as a heads up, we did not tell each other what our ballots are going to be. But, Stefan, I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of same guys, different chairs over the next hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, doing this exercise made me realize if we're doing our top 7 in the Heisman, the top 7 kind of is separated from number 8, number 9, and so on. Even though I did look at the betting odds, our top 7 are not the 7 betting favorites, which I thought is interesting. So we didn't go in line with who the betting favorites are, and yet I think we wound up with the same 7 guys according to our producer Brennan. So this should be a fun exercise to see how we came up with different pictures using the same palette, I guess, of colors.
Yeah. Andrew, if you had a vote, when you vote in something, right, you have a way you go about it. You have a process, you have rules, you have things that you're trying to check off when you're trying to pick somebody. What would be your I'm a Heisman Trophy voter rules for the guys that you would be picking in your top 4?
Yeah, I think you have to be. I mean, obviously, like it's one of the best players in the game. I think like you can't be, for me, just hey, this dude was just really good, or he was solid on a really good team. Like that, personally, I would kind of avoid that, right? I wouldn't really have the kind of lifetime achievement award, if you want to call it that. Like, I don't know what an example would be. I guess in Ohio State terms, it would be like saying Craig Krenzel is Ohio State's 2002 Heisman finalist. Like if you had to send somebody, it's Krenzel. Because, hey, Claret's been good, but I don't know if he's Heisman worthy. He's got good receivers. The defense wins games. The special teams wins games. Like I'm not doing that. You got to be good. I think that matters to me maybe more than some people. I personally would not care if we have a situation where it's, hey, you have a dude on here who's 8-4. Okay, did he rush for 2,400 yards? Because if he did, he's in consideration for the Heisman. So you got to be at that level, but you've got to differentiate yourself, and that to me is a big deal in big games. And I think that's why we're probably going to talk about this list and say, like, there are moments to come where a dude is going to solidify himself or not. But the big moments, the big games, that's what this sport is about. That's what this whole thing is about. If you don't have those, that's going to be really hard for me. I just mentioned, you could be on an 8-4 team and that's not disqualifying. But if you're a running back who has, like I said, 2,400 yards and you rush and you play for Ohio State, and when you play Michigan, you have 42 yards on 18 carries, that's going to be really hard for me to look past. And yeah, cool, you had 320 yards against Minnesota and you ran for, 294 against Washington, but what'd you do against the big teams? That to me matters. So those are probably my two hard and fast. Got to lock it in. Not really looking past that.
Stefan, what are your Heisman voting rules?
I mean, a lot of what Andrew just said, I did take it as, who I would vote for if the thing was today. I tried not to project, hey, if they beat Michigan, this is what's going to happen. If they lose to Michigan, this is what's going to happen. The biggest thing for me is, and I know, all three of us spend a lot of time watching college football. It's also taken into account, the way a guy impacts a game. I think we attach ourselves to stats, a lot of the time, when it comes to stuff like this. But for me, it's watching a game and seeing, the way a guy can impact it and change, what's happening on the field. And that might be something that we talk about, as we get into Jeremiah Smith in this conversation, right? Like we see the way he impacts the game, even if his stats aren't necessarily, and I mean, they're really, he has a really good stats to back it up too. Like I'm not saying he's not, but it's like, I don't know, you don't have to be number one in the country in receiving yards to necessarily, impact the game. So the things of that nature, I think, is important to, see what a guy means to a team, right? And like, say what you will, winning is important in this. There's outliers like and I mean, I don't even like. I was gonna say Travis Hunter is an outlier, but doing that at Colorado is really impressive. They won like 8 games last year, I think it was. So like even that, like winning is relative, but winning I think does matter. Like I think Dylan Gabriel last year, I think he deserved to go, right? Because we saw the impact that he had for the nation's number one team and the only undefeated team, right? And maybe his numbers weren't popping off the page, and maybe it wasn't the strongest Heisman class either. But I think winning is important. And if you're the reason, or you're a big reason why your team is having a considerable amount of success, I think that's okay to take that into account. Oh, you're on mute, Steven.
It never happens on the live anymore. I think I'm where I used to be where Gillis was before they expanded the playoff to 12, where it's like, I'm not okay. Like Lamar Jackson and Louisville are not in the playoff, but have you seen them? I think with the playoff at 12, I think the Heisman can have a little bit of where the NFL MVP, the NBA MVP is, where like, yeah, you're good, but your team stinks. Your team's not even in the conversation to win a national title. I don't think if you are not in the playoff, I don't think I can vote for you unless you are an outlier. We're describing you as we've never seen this before and we'll probably never see it again. I.e. last year with Travis Hunter, where it's like the dude's playing both sides of the ball and he's playing it pretty darn well. I think Travis Hunter was arguably one of the 10 best receivers in college football last year. He was arguably one of the best cornerbacks in college football. He's playing 100 plus snaps a game and he's playing elite on both sides of the ball. I don't care if his team's in the playoff, right? That to me is like when Russell Westbrook averaged a triple double for an entire season right after Kevin Durant left him. It's like, yeah, they made the playoff that year, but had they not made the playoff, I still would have been like, yeah, that dude's the MVP, man. Look what he's doing. Look, he's definitely not the reason why they're losing games. In fact, if he didn't exist, they'd be losing even more. So I think if you're in the playoff field, you are in consideration. If you're not, you better be doing something that we've never seen before, which shaped how I voted in this. If I had to vote today, who would I pick? Because there was somebody who was not on my ballot who would have been on my ballot 100% had they not lost because his team hates him. But we'll get into that in a little bit. We'll start off with, as you can see, producer Brandon again with the graphics because he's better at that than we are.
Shout out, Brandon.
With our honorable mentions, as you know, the Heisman Trophy ballot is a top 4, but here we want to talk about some guys who maybe just didn't make our lists. And we start with Jeremiah Love. None of us put Jeremiah Love on the list. Gillis, why didn't you put Jeremiah Love on your list?
Because there are 4 candidates that are better. I mean, there's the simple answer. Like you see his stats up there right now. Like there's an interesting dynamic with running back because like running back is a very much split proposition, right? Like everywhere in the country you are seeing teams would like to have a split backfield and good teams typically do. Jadarian Price, 85 carries, 521 yards, 8 touchdowns this year. I'm not saying all of those numbers go to Jeremiah Love, but I don't know, 350 yards and 6 of those touchdowns go to Jeremiah Love. Like you're probably looking at his numbers and like, wow, through 8 games, he's over 1,000 yards and he didn't really play a lot when they were blowing some teams out and blah, blah, blah. I mean, he's the best running back in college football, I think. And you just, it was hard for me to make a case for him in the top 4. I think, frankly, I think when I sent the list to Brendan, I think I had him first out. You know, if you do that NCAA tournament style, he was the first team out. He is very, very good. And you watch him play and you think, dang, this guy's electrifying. I don't know if the counting stats are going to be there for him to get there. I've told you guys like off the pod, like I think as a back, as a talent guy, I think he's better than Ashton Genty was a year ago, but Ashton Genty also rushed for like 2,500 yards. Like Ashton Genty had that, and Jeremiah Love could have a great final 4 games of the year, and he's just not going to get those numbers.
I think if Notre Dame would have given him the ball more against Miami, they would have won that game, in my opinion. But also, it's a different conversation. He's sick. They're 6-2. He's a running back, and it's not like a complete split, right? Jeremiah, it's still a 1-2 in their situation.
Like a 1A,
Jeremiah
1B,
Love, yeah, I don't even think it's 1A, 1B. Like Jeremiah Love has significantly more touches than Jadarian Price. Jadarian Price has 88 overall touches. Jeremiah Love has 164 when you add in running and receiving. Like Jeremiah Love is their number 1 back. It's just their number 2 back is also very good. But it's still him than the rest of the field on Notre Dame's team. And it should be that way. He's the best running back in college football. I don't think they have to Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins this, where they're keeping everything as equal as possible. And it just kind of comes down the flow of the game, who has more in whatever statistic. I think Jeremiah Love should have double Jadarian Price's stats. But it's just he's just for me right now, he's a very good running back. They're a fringe playoff team right now, though I think the committee ranked them a lot higher than I think most people were anticipating them being ranked. But he just doesn't have the oomph moment yet. And if you have 2 losses, you got to back that up with an oomph moment for me to put you over the top and put you in my top 4.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is, and it almost feels like Jeremiah Love, the way we talk about him right now, might be the kind of example of where running backs, at least at prominent programs with championship aspirations, are going to be in Heisman conversations moving forward, right? Like he's the type of guy who we know his impact on the game, but when a team has to limit reps and think about long term, this might be the result is they don't quite have that to get in there, right? Like a Boise State running back, that makes sense, right? Because they're going to have to ride an Ashton Genty to make the playoff, let alone, make a run in the playoff. Jeremiah Love, we saw last year, it wouldn't hurt Notre Dame if they, put the foot off the pedal a bit with him. I thought it seemed like that was maybe the approach they were taking in that Miami game, and it ended up losing that game. And you're probably looking back and regretting it. And that maybe was an opportunity. Because I think, like, we'll get into it a bit too. Like, there's Heisman moments. There's also, like, big moments where you kind of had a bit of a dud. And it feels like, and it wasn't really it's not necessarily just his fault, but that Miami game was a chance for him to be like, hey, remember me? I'm the best running back in the country. Here's week 1, me doing it against Miami, on a Sunday night game or Monday night game, whatever it was, like national stage. And he kind of put himself behind the 8 ball, but not having the best game. Not totally his fault, but that's just what happened.
Okay, producer Brendan, who's next on our list? I don't know the orders of these, so it's my king, Tane's king. I didn't put him on. Gillis, you didn't put him on either, but we both have him as honorable mention. So, Stefan, you get to talk about him first since you actually did put the king on your list.
Yeah, I mean, Haynes King has been terrific this year. I don't want to take away from my goal with how I'm going to talk about this today is I'm not going to take away anything from any player. I'm just going. These are the 7 best players in college football. I do not need to diminish one to talk highly about another. But I'm going to do that a little bit. Ty Simpson, Julian Sain, Fernando Mendoza, all great quarterbacks, all quarterbacks who could be put on any team and probably have a level of success. I don't know how many of them would survive if they were asked to do what Haynes King is doing, right? We're talking about, you see the yardage there. He's running for 754 yards with 14 rushing touchdowns, right? Like that's probably not a good formula for Georgia Tech to make a run in the playoff if they do make the playoff. I know they wouldn't right now based on the rankings. But he's being asked to do that something that few players in the country are being asked to do, especially that position. And he's got Georgia Tech in a spot where they can win the ACC and make the college football playoff. And they've been, playing with fire the last few weeks, and it bit them against NC State. So doing these rankings right after that game is kind of tough. He was terrific in that game. So I've got him as 4th on my Heisman ballot. I think he's been outstanding for what Georgia Tech has asked him to do this year. And I don't know how many players in college football would survive doing what he's doing.
Survive is the right word, because I feel like every single week they kill him. Seriously, every week I watch a Georgia Tech game and I feel like I'm just watching Florida with Tim Tebow, and it's just QB power. Hey, Haynes, QB power. Now it's 3rd and long. Can you complete a pass? And he goes, yes. Okay, cool. Now we're going back to QB power. Man, he's what the award's all about to me, Andrew. Like, seriously, how many of us growing up on a video game created a player that could throw for 200 yards and run for 100 yards?
Every year, like every one of us every year that came out, we did Road to Glory or Create a Pro or whatever it was called in Madden. Every year.
And that's seriously, that's what they did on Saturday. He had 200 plus passing yards, 100 plus rushing yards, and they lost because the defense said, we're just not going to get any stops today. And Haynes King, I'm like, can y'all please just get one stop? I would have had him number 2 for me, but I just think I don't think he's better players than the people who made my ballot. And I think the way he was playing and the way Georgia Tech was playing, I think they would have had to get to the ACC championship game unfazed for me to have, if I was a true voter, seriously put him in my top 4, given who else is on the list. And so even us doing this today, I kind of honored that. Like, when you lose, and the 4 guys I have on this ballot, one of them has a bad loss, but has kind of rebounded from that loss. I think you guys know where I'm going with that one. But the other 3 are, just 2 of the best players in the country and the quarterback of the other best team in the country. It was just hard for me to put Haynes King on this ballot in the world where he was. You know what ended up happening? I switched him for another guy to emphasize just how good this team has been this season. So that's why Haynes King gets left off the ballot for me, unfortunately. He was my first one off, though. He was number 5 for me.
Yeah, like I said, I think Jeremiah Love was my first one off. Somebody asked in the chat, is he a running back or a quarterback?
Yes.
Georgia Tech. Well, I literally was thinking yes. They beat Colorado week 1. He had 20 pass attempts, 19 carries. They beat Clemson week 2, 28 pass attempts, 25 carries. Like, they're big games. When he needs to, he runs the ball. Like, their offensive meetings basically every single week at Georgia Tech are probably just like Rocky IV when they ask Drago and he goes, if he dies, he dies. Like, I don't think they care. Like, they just keep giving him the ball. And it's like, look, props to Haynes King for kind of handling that. He's averaging 5.7 yards per carry, 754 rushing yards and 1,888 passing yards. So, like, he's still obviously, more efficient passing than he is running, or at least he has better stats that way. But like, against NC State, he threw the ball 35 times and carried it 20 at 100 yards. Like, he's been unbelievable. And I want to touch on 2 things before I turn it back over. Buckeye Ryan in the chat said, do you think they might go to the NFL model where there's an MVP and a Super Bowl MVP and they're both highly regarded? I think that is one of the fixes to this. I think with the way that the playoff has expanded, like I'm a hockey fan. I don't know how many people watching or listening are hockey fans, but they have an MVP award, the Hart Trophy, in the regular season, and it's highly regarded. It's the MVP trophy of the award of the league like it's a big deal. Then they also have the Conn Smythe Trophy for the Stanley Cup playoffs, and that is also a very big deal. And what they do, they bring the commissioner out and they say the winner of the Conn Smythe Trophy is, and they hand the trophy to the whoever won the award. Most of the time, except for a few occasions, it goes to the team that won the national championship. Every once in a while, there's like a, holy crap, this dude was unbelievable, and we have to give it to this guy, even though his team lost. And they will do that every once in a while, but they're both highly regarded. And then they award the Stanley Cup. So I do think Buckeye Ryan has a point that I wonder if they do add a playoff MVP. I think that might be something that is worth looking into. I would certainly be in favor of it. So I do think that matters. The question I have for you guys is, sorry for Melissa, who's a Red Wings fan. That's tough. The question I have for you guys is, how much do you guys value this notion of he's dragging the team along? How much do you, like last year with Genty, it was very clear that not only was Genty the workhorse, but Genty was the engine that made that thing go. Was Boise State a good team around him? Yes. They wouldn't have kind of hung with Oregon or hung with some of the teams that they did. You know, that Penn State game was not a total blowout, even though Penn State was in control. Like, how much does that matter to you? Because I was thinking about this as I put Haynes King in. Like, if Haynes King was doing this at Ohio State, if his numbers were exactly the same and Ohio State was 8-0, like, would we have him on this ballot? Because the defense would be the best in the country. He would be throwing to JJ and Carnell, and like there would be all this stuff. So I'm curious, like, what you guys think the value is, whether it's a lot or a little, of this dude is not only the engine, he's the carburetor, he's the windshield wiper fluid, he's the lights, he's everything that makes that team go, whether or not they're best team in the country or not.
I mean, I place some value into that. If you're the one who makes the team go, and it is one of the, like, I don't know, to this point, like I voted to what I've seen to this point, and to this point, Georgia Tech is one of the better teams in the country. Now they've lost the game, I get that, but they're still ranked in the top 20, and frankly, I think he's the reason they're a top 20 team. Like, I think he's the guy that is responsible for them being a top 20 team. So there's a mix of it, right? Like, if you're the engine, and his team is 6-3 or 5-4, then okay, you're not doing a whole lot. But when they're 8-1 and right firmly in the mix of the conversation for top 20, top 15, and potentially playoff teams, I give him a lot of credit for that. I think that's why I had him at number 4.
Yeah, that's why I almost considered him. It's just I don't think he's better than the 4 guys I put on here. That's all. I mean, because even the whole if he was at Ohio State, I mean, you can do that the other way, right? What he's doing at Georgia Tech is because they need him to do that at Georgia Tech, but that's also because it's what his skill set is. He can throw it a little bit, right? 2 years ago, he had 27 touchdown passes, but he also had 16 interceptions. So it kind of goes both ways of, yeah, there's an efficiency, but they're also kind of, there's a lot of JT Barrett in Haynes King, where I'm completing 72% of my passes, but I'm also not throwing it a whole bunch. Goj in our chat is saying Lincoln Keen also put up the same numbers as Georgia Tech. I think that's what it is. Yeah, I think that's the skill set of, like, I can throw it a little bit, but if you ask me to throw it 35 times, I'm gonna make a lot of mistakes. But if you ask me to throw it 18 to 22 times and run it 8 to 30 million times a game, that's how we maximize our offense. And I think if he was at Ohio State, he'd run into that same problem. Just like if Julian Sand or Ty Simpson were at Georgia Tech, I think that they would be more willing to air the ball out a little bit, right? Just because of what their skill sets are. So some of this is Georgia Tech isn't doing this because it's what they've. I understand they ran the triple option for a long time. That's not necessarily what they are anymore. They're just catering to what their quarterback skill set is. It's just that their quarterback skill set has gotten them to 8-1, and quite frankly, would have been more positioned to be the ACC's college football playoff team 4 days ago had they not lost their first game of the season. But it's why that's why he's on this list for all of us, even if he's just honorable mention for 3 of us because we all think he's the engine behind a team who is still flirting with playoff contention. Hit me, Brennan. A little shocked.
Well, he has to. Gillis has to.
No. Let me. I'm a little shocked he's not higher. Because Gillis, you called it. You called it in the preseason. And, I mean, first of all, speaking of dudes who like can throw it a little bit and then can run it a lot.
Yeah.
But the only difference between Marcel Reed and Haynes King is Marcel Reed is obviously a little bit more electric as a runner and not just bulldozing into people. But he's also doing this while being the size of a freshman cornerback.
6'1", 185.
Devin Sanchez is 6'1", 185. So why is he 3? We don't have him on our list. You get to talk about him.
Yeah, he rocks. like he's awesome. Like you mentioned it, the total yards are right there. He's leading an 8-0 team. When I was looking at their schedule, I understand that, their schedule has maybe not been the SEC schedule that some teams have. And I know that's a hot button issue around these parts, but the SEC does have better teams than what A&M has played. But I put some stock into the fact that they had to go to Notre Dame and not just win that game 21-17. Like they won that game 41-40. Marcel Reed threw for 360 yards that night on a woefully overmatched Notre Dame defense. He also ran for 37 yards. They could not keep him in the pocket a lot, but he didn't really need to be in the pocket because he would just find guys open. So the fact that they had to win a shootout, I put some stock into. They've really only had one down game offensively this year. They played Auburn 2 weeks after that. They scored 16 points. Everything else, 31, 34, 45, 49. They're scoring a lot of points on people, and he is a dynamic threat in that regard. Like when they played LSU, he was the leading passer. He was the leading rusher. Somebody has every snap has the potential to be explosive. And, I think we talk about this with some other people that are going to be on my Heisman list. We can't be like, watch the game. JJ's stats are not what this guy's stats are because they're double teaming him or because he has Carnell Tate. We also can't ignore the fact that Texas A&M's the rest of their offense is open because this guy can do a lot, right? Like this guy can run the ball. This guy is throwing the ball, and that opens everything up. So he's leading an 8-0 team. He's the number they were number 3 in the CFP. Number 3 team, undefeated guy leading that roster. They play Missouri this weekend, which will be an interesting game because Missouri has a backup quarterback, but I think Missouri elsewhere is pretty good. And they play South Carolina and Samford. They win one of those 2 games at Missouri or at Texas to end the year, and you go 11-1. They're going to the SEC championship game. And I think at that point, you might be able to start to pencil him into a trip to New York because there's going to be some interesting conversations about who should go and what those conference championship games mean. But Marcel Reed, he's been doing it all year. He's really, really good.
I think the SEC is playing for one guaranteed spot in New York during conference championship weekend.
Assuming it's Alabama and A&M.
Yeah, I think they're playing for one. But I also think that one could finish as high as 2.
Good.
So I chose my one here, and it wasn't Marcel Reed. With all due respect to what he did this year.
Yeah, I'm probably in a similar boat with you. Marcel's been outstanding this year, and Gillis definitely he saw that in the preseason. And he's part of that engine for Texas A&M that gets you going. They've got some awesome receiver. They got fast, 50 dudes at receiver. They're a lot of fun to watch offensively, which is interesting because that's not necessarily what Elko is known for. But they've been outstanding offensively. Marcel Reed's a big reason why. This maybe feels like the perfect time for me to mention that my kind of sleeper Heisman guy that had in the top 4 in the preseason leads the country in passing yards and passing touchdowns. That's Sawyer Robertson, but Baylor has not been as good as I thought. So I was only half wrong on that.
I was only half.
You're only half wrong about.
I was only half wrong that we're not talking about the guy in the Heisman conversation.
Listen, I said Sawyer Robertson was going to be awesome. He's been screwed over by Baylor losing some games. If Baylor was 7-1, 8-0, we'd say, "Whoa, this dude's leading the country in passing yards and passing touchdowns." He'd be part. He would be part of the conversation.
So
haven't been a Heisman voter. We're only so smart.
Here's our top. Here's who we've marked down. Gillis picked Cade Klubnik to win, Arch Manning to finish second, Jeremiah Smith to finish third, and Marcel Reed to finish fourth. 2 of those 4 are still alive to get to New York. 2 of those 4 exist. Stefan, Arch Manning to win, Cade Klubnik to finish second, Jeremiah Smith to finish third, Sawyer Robertson to finish fourth. Sawyer Robertson is doing what every Big 12 quarterback has been doing for the past 15 years, putting up a bunch of numbers and losing. One of your people is still alive.
One guy could be in first.
One of yours is still alive, and the other 2 exist. Steven, Cade Klubnik to win it, Jeremiah Smith to finish second, Arch Manning to finish third, Julian Sand to finish fourth. 2 are alive, and 2 exist. We didn't do that bad at this. It's just the top 2 for all of us are just like. We spent a lot of time saying Arch Manning is not that good, just for all of us to put Arch Manning, just for all 3 of us to put Arch Manning on our Heisman Trophy, mark it down Mondays.
I mean, listen, Arch Manning's not out of this thing. If he beats Texas A&M, there's going to be people who buy into it again. He has played better the last couple of times out. Granted, that was against Mississippi State, and I can't remember what the other game was. He's looked better. I am preparing myself for if Texas beats Texas A&M and Arch has a good game, for someone to be like, did we rule this guy out just because he had a couple bad games at the start of the season? Yes, we did. And he also has not been great. But this is more of a warning than anything of like, I don't know if this is done yet.
If they hadn't lost to Florida, I think there'd be a real case people would be trying to make that Arch Manning should be back in there. And you know what? I might be listening to him. Not to win it, but just to get to New York.
We have Marcel Reed's numbers up on screen right now, 2,321 total yards. Arch Manning, 2,326 total yards. Marcel Reed, 23 combined touchdowns. Arch Manning, 24 combined touchdowns. Marcel Reed, 6 picks. Arch Manning, 6 picks. And again, it's one of those things where it's like, I think you have to use the eye test in this one. And like, not trying to be that guy and I'm not trying to make fetch happen, but Texas A&M still plays Texas. And if Texas gets to that game at 9-2 on Black Friday, that is a win and in game for Texas going into the college football playoff. And Arch Manning will be going up against Marcel Reed.
But I don't think Arch can play himself into New York, but he can definitely play Marcel out of New York.
That's probably what the most likely thing was. But I do think it's always good to have your Arch Manning radar up.
And thank you. Now we spent 5 minutes talking about Arch Manning, and so we've done that for the sake of SEO. Yay! Hit me, Brennan. All right. Well, before Gillis and I go, we'll talk about why Stefan did not have Jeremiah Smith on his ballot, despite marking down that he would finish third in the preseason.
First of all, I'm not petty like Gillis, where I have to think I was right in the preseason, so I have to keep backing it up. Okay, I can change my mind.
Timeout, flag on the field, holding, clipping, blocking the back. That's not why I had.
It was unnecessary roughness on my list.
Yeah, that was unnecessary roughness, unsportsmanlike conduct. That's his first of 2. Next one's an ejection. No, I did not do that because I had Marcel Reed on my preseason list. I would have had him on here if we didn't.
That's fine. I wasn't accusing you of anything.
Oh, it seems like you were doing a little bit of accusing. Leading the witness.
I very strategically said at the start of this pod that I'm not talking about how someone just missed out. I'm talking about how high I have Jeremiah Smith compared to the greatness of college football. He was fifth on my list. He was the first guy outside the top four. I mean, he's been amazing. Like there's no denying it. He is part of the engine. Like we talk about guys that are engines for their team. Like someone earlier commented, let me can't find it right now. Someone had commented about Carnell Tate maybe being the Ohio State receiver that should be on this list. And you're right. Like Carnell Tate's also playing at a Heisman level. He's kind of been the third wheel to this, Heisman. It was Jacob. It was third wheel to kind of this Heisman thing with Ohio State. But I think we do. Carnell Tate is awesome. We also see what defenses do against Jeremiah Smith, right? And for Jeremiah Smith to doing what he's doing is just outstanding. I mean, you see the numbers there on the screen. I think they're only going to get better. Like these numbers to this point, like he hasn't even really had like that game yet, which is crazy because he just had 120 yards and 2 touchdowns against Penn State. It's like I still think there's like another. Like I think we might get a game where JJ gets 3 or 4 touchdowns and really firmly kind of puts himself into this race. But yeah, as of right now, I had him at 5th. I have 4 quarterbacks ahead of him. I mentioned Haynes King earlier. I have 3 other quarterbacks ahead of him. Spoiler alert. But he's been great. Like there's no doubt in my mind that he's the best receiver in college football. And I think we might be a couple years away from the New York Jets drafting Julian Saint and Jeremiah Smith and saying, hey, we have Garrett Wilson over here, Jeremiah Smith over here, Julian Saint over here. Maybe we can make some things work and just pretend that we're Ohio State. So, that's where I have JJ. He was the first one outside my top 4.
That's what
Here's the problem. They tried to do that this past year with Ohio State quarterback and Ohio State wide receiver and Ohio State tight end and Ohio State center, and it didn't work. So maybe I don't know. Maybe
if they improve the Ohio State quarterback, maybe it will work.
Yeah, the last Ohio State quarterback they had, the owner came out and said this guy stinks, which is just insane.
Which I stand with Justin Fields on that. You're the one who signed him. So.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I have the perfect comparison for Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. You guys remember Reggie Bush and Lindell White at USC in 2005?
Oh yeah.
Reggie Bush, 200 carries, 1,700 yards, 40 touchdowns,
200 carries, 1,700 yards. My God.
200 carries, 1,740 yards, 16 touchdowns, plus another 37 carries and 478 yards and 2 touchdowns. Lindell White, 197 carries, 1,302 yards, 24 touchdowns, 14 receptions for 219 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like from a stat standpoint, like Lindell White's not getting blown out the water by Reggie Bush because they had a 2-back system and they were awesome in that 2-back system. It's just you turned on the games every Saturday and it was like, oh, that one, number 5 is the Heisman. It's number 5. It's number 5. And I think that's what's happening here, and it should be happening here. Carnell Tate is a very, 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 very good receiver. JJ is in a class by himself, right? It's the difference between being a dude who is, what did we say yesterday, Stefan? The idea of when we were I don't know if actually we were having this conversation on a podcast or in a meeting. All those things is kind of wrapped together. But the thing I'm looking into doing right now is comparing Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson to these two. Jeremiah Smith is Jamar Chase. Carnell Tate is Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson ended up being, in the 20s?
22nd, yeah.
Jamar Chase is wide receiver 1, and he was a top 5 draft pick. And I think that's how these two might play out, where like Carnell this year is probably going to go in the 20s, and JJ might flirt with the number 1 pick. And if he's not, the only reason he's not the number 1 pick is because a bunch of quarterbacks come off the board with the first 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or 5 picks, like it did when Marv came out. So it's I don't think it's a discredit to Carnell. It's more just acknowledging that one of these dudes is a once in a generation, we might never see this again type of receiver. And the other one is a very good receiver who's going to have a very good NFL career, right? So that's the difference here. I have Jeremiah Smith at 4th on my list. Jeremiah Smith's on my list because he's the best player in college football, and the best player in college football should be in New York. The award goes to the best player in college football, and I don't think he can win it thanks to some quarterbacks and specifically one of his own teammates who's the quarterback, but he should be in New York. In fact, I think he should be in New York the next 2 years. I just think a spot should be reserved for him, barring injury or him just falling off a cliff. Yeah. And the latter, I don't think is going to happen. In the former, I mean, you just can't predict that. We didn't predict that Jackson Smith-Njigba was going to get hurt or Nick Bosa was going to get hurt. But if Ohio State, since we're doing this based on if the season ended today, they are the best team in college football by like a wide margin. And the committee even said that. They literally pointed out, yeah, it was close because Indiana's got a good resume, but Ohio State's better in the trenches, and they also have superstars. Mm-hmm. They literally just pulled the we watch ball reasoning for why Ohio State is number one. Part of we watch ball is watching the dude we've got up on the screen right now every single Saturday get double covered, and the moment he's not double covered, it's a 40-yard bomb down the field.
Yeah, like I had JJ Fourth for the same thing. Like I think he's obviously very, very good. The thing that I was kind of curious about is, you know, like when I was looking at these stats, you know, it's interesting to talk about because there is another receiver like you were talking about in Carnell Tate. And I said this, I think in the press box to you guys, he's got 39 catches for 711 yards and 7 touchdowns this season. And I think I said this after the game that Carnell Tate is much closer to Jeremiah Smith in terms of like talent than people realize. Like, I think there are many people that have just gone, JJ's unquestionably the best receiver in college football, and he is. But it's not JJ number one, everyone else stinks in comparison to him. Then you start to get to number two. Like, Carnell Tate is within spitting distance, I think, talent-wise, of JJ. And I think Carnell, like, there are just some things that he has that are going to make NFL teams very, very happy. And like one of those things is like he is better than Jeremiah Smith at making contested catches along the sideline. I think like in terms of like using like footwork to get down, finding out where he is. I think he's great along the sidelines. Like JJ can go up and get it. Like if it's a jump ball, but when you throw a 20-yard out to Carnell and, you know, Julian puts it in the window as he always does, Carnell is excellent at dragging his feet, hand placement, getting the ball down. Like I think Carnell is elite at certain categories. And like that to me was the interesting thing because, you know, like what if we get to the end of the year and JJ has, you know, 12 touchdowns and 10,000, like 1,000, not 10,000 yards, my God, 1,050 yards receiving. It's like, he's the best player in college football, but there also has to be a numbers side of this to back that up in some way, shape, or form, because there has to be a limit to it, right? It can't be, well, he's the best player in college football, but he has 800 yards, right? Well, this guy's the best quarterback in college football, but he's only thrown for 2,200 yards because it's a running team or something like that. Like it can't be like they have to marry together, and that to me was the interesting thing. But I just think JJ's that much better that you put him in there.
Do you think he's not going to have the numbers?
I mean, it depends what not have the numbers means. Like I said, like he could end the year, like he has 1,050 yards to end the year. I mean, that's what 300.
Do you think he's only going to have that? Okay, that's an if. Do you think he's going to only have that?
Wouldn't shock me.
I would be
if he doesn't end up with 1,100 yards, it would not shock me. And by the end of the regular season, it would not shock me. Like by the end of the Michigan game.
Given who they play the next 3 weeks, I would be very shocked if he had only 1,100 yards the rest of the season. Like they're going to stack.
Yeah, and if they spam him the ball, yeah, then 10
but
catches.
But also, like their numbers are not created equal. Okay, it's Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson. They're both very good shooters, but part of the reason Klay Thompson gets some of the looks is because Stephen Curry has the gravitational pull that he has. Yeah, sure. Carnell might be technically more further along than Jeremiah Smith is from a technical skill standpoint. He's also been in college football an extra year. Nathan used to use this example of if you got two runners and they both run a 4.5 and one of them runs a 4.5 with perfect form and perfect technique, and the other one's 4.5, but it's a little sloppy and there's a lot of things to clean up. Who's faster? It's the guy who doesn't have perfect form because there's still room for him to grow. because you're going, oh, if you can run the exact same thing I run, and I've learned how to do this the right way, and you're actively still learning how to do this, imagine when you perfect your form, what it's going to look like. And that's where, like, we got to remember, JJ's still only in his second year of college football. He's playing this much because he's talented enough to play this much. But he even said so. Last year, he was kind of operating on talent. And he put up 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns. So imagine what happens as he gets more technically sound. And that's what we're starting to see. But also, he gets doubled significantly more often than every player in college football, including his own teammate. So Carnell Tate is I hate that it sounds like I'm just like downing on Carnell Tate. I agree with you, Buckeye Ryan. Carnell Tate's the best receiver not named Jeremiah Smith. But I don't know if like he's in spitting distance of Jeremiah Smith in a world where he gets to be one-on-one all the time, because all the attention still is on number 4. And it doesn't matter that Carnell was 5 for 124 and a score on Saturday. There is not a world where he does that and people go, oh, we should double him instead of Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the comparison. Like, it kind of feels like one of those, like, which is heavier, 10 pounds of feathers or 10 pounds of bricks? Like,
no, it's not. Because one of them, like, how is that? That's not what I said.
I know, but you're saying, like, if they both run a 4.5 and one guy's a little clumsy with it and one guy's perfect.
Yeah.
form,
So with what happens if he's no longer? I'm not arguing about this.
Yeah.
Next slide, Stefan. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, if you like one of
there's still room for JJ, which is kind of crazy to think.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Ty Simpson. Oh, so here's where I guess I'll go then, since I have him the highest of everybody. Ty Simpson being number 2 is because of who I have number 1. And I think bad Florida State game in week 1, but he's looked very good in the week since. And if he backslides that if he's on the back end doing what he did where he's beating 4 straight ranked teams, and then he closes it out with maybe Texas A&M or literally anybody else, I think he's the better quarterback than Fernando Mendoza, with all due respect to what Fernando was doing this year. And also, I think that Julian and Fernando are going to have to go through each other, and I think Julian might outplay Fernando so much, while Ty Simpson is just kind of killing it down there in the SEC championship game. But even like this weekend, even like right now, it feels like the SEC is destined to finish second in this Heisman Trophy race, and I just think whoever they finish behind will be either Julian Sand or Fernando Mendoza. If that, I don't even know if that completely made sense, but
the projection of it definitely makes sense. I took it more as like where I would have him right now. That's why I have him 3rd. I have him behind the 2 guys that you mentioned, obviously. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's been outstanding. It's what's interesting with him too is like, again, there's kind of this. I think I maybe have viewed the Heisman in the past, even when I've voted on it, of like, I probably treated him more like an MVP than like a most outstanding player. And maybe that's right. Maybe that's wrong. That's fine. But like the way I talk about Haynes King, like the way that he makes that offense work and everything kind of relies on him. Alabama's running game has not been good this year. Like, Alabama's struggling to run the ball. And they're still one of the best offenses in the country and one of the best teams in the country. And this guy's a big reason why, right? Like, he's the 22 totals. Yeah, I mean, he's running for another 80 yards, right? Like, he's given them some level of mobility for a team that's not necessarily running the ball well. I didn't write down his completion percentage. Let me pull that up real quick, because I think
67.8.
Okay, not terrific, but it is funny because it's like we watch a guy who has 80%, and sometimes you're reminded like, hey, 73 like isn't that bad either. Like 67 is not terrible either.
It's normal.
Yeah, that's just normal. But yeah, Ty's been terrific. Like, it is. I was on with Bill and Doug recently for their Around the Shoe segment. We talked about like what would be Ohio State's quarterback situation if Nick Saban hadn't retired, and I think Ty Simpson might be the answer, right? Maybe Julian's starting for Nick Saban right now at Alabama, and the answer was definitely Ohio State would probably be in the portal. I don't think they would have gone into this year with Lincoln Keenholz or Aaron Nolan or whatever, like Devin Brown as their starter. I think they would have gone into the portal and got someone, and this probably would have been who they got. And he'd actually probably be pretty good at Ohio State too, because he's pretty damn good at Alabama right now. And his story is also cool. Just like, I think a lot of people wrote him off the year where they like Saban was trying to prove that Milroe is better, and Milroe was better. And I think people were kind of just done. I think people have been kind of surprised that he's still at Alabama. And I think now we're seeing why, right? He's playing at a really high level. They're one of the best teams in the country. They were number 4 in the college football playoff rankings. And for an Alabama team that can't really run the ball, which is like weird to say considering, I don't know, they had Derrick Henry and other like Mark Ingram and other amazing running backs who literally won this award that we're talking about right now. They're not running the ball really well, and their offense is just fine because of this guy right here. He's been outstanding.
Do you think Julian Sands ridiculous? Do you think Ty Simpson could be putting up Julian Sands numbers if he had Julian Sands talent around him?
Probably close to it. I don't think he would be completing 80% of his passes. I think that's a testament to Julian Sands' accuracy, which I think is the best accuracy in the country. But would he be above 67%? Sure. He'd probably be, I think Mendoza's at 72.3%. That's fifth in the country. That's probably around where Ty Simpson would be. I mean, it's not like Alabama has scrubs at receiver either.
They don't. But I'm also happy that people are realizing that Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith do not belong in the same conversation. Like, I think Alabama should go get Cam Coleman if he hops in the portal. I think they lose to Texas in week 1 if Ty Simpson's their starting quarterback. I think they're 7-1. Just because part of the thing that was so impressive with Julian is even if they didn't ask him to do it, he was very clearly ready to do it. And I just don't think Ty Simpson was ready to do it in week 1. And that was part of the problem. Now, their defense also stunk and they can't run the ball. But it just didn't seem like Ty Simpson was ready for the moment in week 1, even if it was a much smaller moment than what Julian Sand was walking into. So I just think the difference might be Alabama's 8-0 right now and Ohio State's 7-1. I literally think that's the only difference. And then, like, yes, some of the counting numbers are a little bit different. Like, he's probably only like 73, 74%, while Julian Sand, I think Julian Sand is at 80% because of the combination of his arm talent mixed with Carnell and JJ. I think regardless of what offense you put him in, as long as the receivers are decent and quality level, he'd have been at least 75% in any offense.
Probably, yeah.
Ty Simpson being at Ohio State versus anywhere else in the country is the difference between him being at 73 to 75% to what he's at now, which is 67%, 68% in the country, right? So I think that's fair. Gillis, why no Ty Simpson for you?
I think Ohio State's the best team in the country, so they deserve to have 2 players there. And there's a team in the Big Ten who's undefeated. Hypothetically, I could have him on my list. And then there's Marcel Reed, who's a team that's undefeated in the SEC, and he's been awesome this year. And he is, I think, maybe been a little bit more of that engine that we were talking about with Haynes King. Ty Simpson is the guy that I think if I had to make a bet right now, somebody I didn't have on my list who's going to be on or be in New York, I think he would probably be the best one. Like right now, we did our poll. I had Jeremiah Love as the first out. I don't think he really has much of a path to go forward unless he just like starts ripping off like 250-yard games down the stretch and drags Notre Dame to the playoff. I don't think he's got that. Like, I just don't think that's going to happen with Jeremiah Love. With Ty Simpson, I think Ty Simpson might be able to play his way into that mix. And frankly, if the NFL draft were tomorrow and I was a quarterback needy team looking for a quarterback, I would be picking Ty Simpson over Fernando Mendoza. I think Ty Simpson is a better quarterback than Fernando Mendoza. I think Fernando is awesome, but Ty Simpson to me, in terms of 26 kids that are going to come out, Ty might be the guy right now that I would take over Fernando, over Dante Moore. Like he's that guy to me. So yeah, he's close, but the way that the math shook out, the way that certain teams are playing right now, I could not have him in the top 4, and he was just outside of it. It was a conversation in my head, but dude's awesome. And we talk about like the accuracy of Julian Sand, and yeah, like I think that, that's important to note. Like Ty Simpson's also only thrown 1 pick. Like Ty Simpson, it's not like he's putting the ball in harm's way, even if it does go for an incomplete pass. So yeah, I have Simpson just looking out, but like it would not shock me. I know Alabama's schedule the rest of the way is not all that daunting. They play LSU this upcoming weekend on the road. I know that's at home. So I know LSU's something, but
they're not good.
Yeah, they just fired Brian Kelly. Like we'll see if like they get the dead cat bounce after you fire a coach. But they play Oklahoma the week after. That can be interesting because Oklahoma's defense is pretty solid. Then they play Auburn to end the year, but it's not a murderer's row. And I think if Ty Simpson gets through that, I think we're going to go into conference championship week, and I think you could have a situation where it's Sayan, Mendoza, Smith, Reed, Simpson, and 5 guys are playing for 4 spots.
Well, it feels like Sayan and Mendoza are going to play to win it, and Simpson and Reed are probably going to play to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, we'll see how the regular season ends, but
yeah, no,
Ohio State loses to Michigan or something. Yeah.
All right, go ahead and put Fernando Mendoza up on the screen, Brennan. We're homers. And one of us is really a homer.
I told you I've been voting to this point. If I were to predict who's going to win, I think it's going to be Julian Sane. But Fernando Mendoza hasn't had his dud against Ohio State that we're all predicting is going to happen.
Yeah.
I think Fernando Mendoza has been the best quarterback in the country so far. I think the way that he has controlled Indiana's kind of RPO offense has been outstanding. I think one thing that's interesting with him too is like, and this is not necessarily Sayan's fault or Simpson's fault or Haynes King's fault, like whatever. He's kind of had his Heisman moment already, and he can obviously have it again if they play Ohio State in the national, or I guess in the national championship game, but the Big Ten championship game, which would help determine the Heisman. But the drive that he led at Oregon, it was obviously early in the season. We're talking or midway through the season, whatever, of a Heisman moment, right? Like, and he did kind of create the Heisman moment for himself because he threw a pretty bad pick in Oregon. Yeah. But Indiana controlled that game, most of it, and Haynes King, Fernando Mendoza was a big reason why. I think he's been one of the better stories in college football. I think Indiana is undefeated in large part because of what he has done. It's crazy to think Curtis Rourke was amazing last year, and had he been healthy down the stretch, I think he maybe could have had some better showings and maybe been part of the Heisman conversation more. That said, it was hard to see, okay, this Indiana team, what's kind of the encore to what they did in 2024? A big reason why maybe some people had questions was, okay, what's going to happen at quarterback? Because Rourke was awesome for them, and he ran that RPO offense at a very efficient rate, and Mendoza's come in and taken that to a next level. I think they've been to this point they've been the best offense in the country, but we know to take into account that Ohio State has kind of played a certain way that, like, at its core, Ohio State's the best offense in the country. They've just kind of kept their foot off the pedal at times, whereas Indiana's kind of kept on it. So regardless of how you look at it, they're number 1 and number 2 in terms of offenses in the country. And Mendoza has been a big reason why. So I think he's been outstanding. I think he's been the best quarterback to this point. And I think he's had a Heisman moment, which I think is kind of important.
Do style points matter in this conversation? And if so, how much do they matter?
I think probably a little bit, right? Like are you talking about in terms of like play, like having a little like pizzazz to your game and like stuff like that? Or
just like, yes. like eye-popping stats that are just like basic stuff. Like we're talking a lot about the fact that Julian Sand is completing 80% of his passes, but I just don't know if the average person is, when they pull up a box score, the first thing they're doing is, okay, how many passes did you complete, right? I just don't know if that's how the average viewer is watching football. But Indiana's blowing everybody out by a lot of points. They're and I think part of this is because we're so close to Ohio State. And I'm assuming, Andrew, that you've got Julian Sand winning the Heisman Trophy.
Hypothetically, we haven't gotten there yet, but
yes or no?
Yes.
If it's yes, we're going to talk about them together. So do you have Julian Sand winning the Heisman?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
cool.
Yes.
You don't have to put it up yet, Brandon. It's just for the sake of this conversation, because this is a Julian Mendoza conversation for both of you two. I revealed my reasons before. This is maybe the most, having Ty Simpson ahead of Fernando Mendoza is maybe the most, here's where it's at, plus also where it feels like it's trending for me, and why I went Ty Simpson over Fernando Mendoza. But I think Julian Sand could have Fernando Mendoza's counting stats very easily if Ohio State wanted him to have Fernando Mendoza's counting stats. I don't think Ohio State needs him to do that for him, right? I think Indiana, because there is still a part of the world that's getting used to Indiana being this good, where they have to show it every week just how good they are. I think it's Parker Fleming on Twitter every week who puts out that stat of, it shows just how bad you actually did get beat.
Yeah.
Every single week. And Indiana is constantly to the far right of that graphic, where it's just like, yeah, you really did get beat that badly. I think Indiana, unfortunately, still needs to do that. I still think Fernando Mendoza has to do that. Ohio State is just now getting to the point of the season where Julian Sand is going to need to start stat padding. But because they have the brand, as GOJ is actually saying exactly what I'm saying. They have the cachet and the attention that they don't have to run it up to prove how good they are every single week. And Fernando Mendoza does. And I do think maybe part of it is because I'm so close to it. I don't need Ohio State to do that to know just how good Julian Sand is, right? Like Penn State, Gillis, you've been making this point for a couple of weeks now. Penn State sucks, but they do have talent. And those throws that Julian Sand were making, I don't care what the talent is. Those are not easy throws, regardless of who's covering it. He's literally putting it in the one place it needs to be at the right time for a guy to make that. I just don't. There's not another quarterback doing what Julian Sand is doing right now. And it's unfortunate that his schedule has worked out in a way where he hasn't gotten to do it against a team that actually matters. But I know what he's doing. And I do think that this past weekend, Penn State was enough of a brand cachet that people watched, especially people who have YouTube TV, that throw it all away, man. Like, no one's doing what this kid is doing.
Yeah.
And that's like Heisman level. When you are doing things that nobody else is doing and you're winning games, that's a Heisman Trophy winner to me.
Well, I think what's fascinating too, and like we've moved on to the Julian slide, and I have him at 2. What's interesting is you talk about the counting stats. Sand has 2 fewer passing touchdowns than Mendoza. He has more passing yards. He's got a better completion percentage. Sand's played 1 fewer game. Mendoza's still got another bye left. So like Sand is there with the counting stats, and you figure down. We'll see. There's part of me that's a little bit nervous about Indiana playing at Penn State this week. It is Penn State's kind of they're back home. Maybe there's some kind of a bounce back. We'll see. This kind of feels like Penn State's last gasp of like, is there going to be a Terry Smith like bounce back, whatever. Yeah. But down the stretch, beyond the Penn State game, whatever happens there, Mendoza's got some games where he can stat pad. Right, they both play Purdue. I can't remember who else Indiana plays outside of Penn State, but there's going to be some opportunities for both these guys to stat pad. They're both going to have, I think, the counting stats by the time we get to Indianapolis, which is then, that game will kind of be the deciding factor. But Wisconsin, thanks, Brendan. That Fernando Mendoza will bat his stats against Wisconsin, just like Julian Sand had some pretty good numbers against Wisconsin. So
Julian Sand threw it 42 times and putting the over-under on the amount of throws Fernando Mendoza has that day at 41.5.
Yeah, it's gonna be similar, and then that will still also take into account them running the ball the entire fourth quarter. And by the way, one of the funniest things on social media this year, and like when Alberto Mendoza comes into the game in the fourth quarter and does something, and people on Twitter are like, "LOL, Fernando Mendoza padding his stats." It's like, no, that's his brother in the game. The backup quarterback is his brother. It's not Indiana just padding stats for the Heisman campaign, even though they do have some pretty impressive margins of victory. There's a question I want to ask you guys, but I want to let you guys make your case for Sayin first, and then maybe round it out with the question that I have about Sayin versus Mendoza, because it does feel like those two guys are going to play each other, and the winner probably wins the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, that my case is, I mean, no one's doing what this kid's doing through 8 games. Like, and that's got to matter. If it feels like everything else is equal, which one is doing something? I haven't seen a quarterback throw like this in CJ. And in fact, I think he might be a little bit better. I think his accuracy, his ball placement might be a little bit better than where CJ was. And that's saying something. So it's just that. They're dominating everybody they play, and they're doing it however they want to do it. And their quarterback, it's like, if they need him to do something, he's guaranteed to do it. And I don't know if there's another player in the country where if you absolutely need him to do something, there is a 99.9% chance he is going to execute the thing you need him to execute. And if he doesn't, it's because somebody else messed up and he just had to throw the ball away and live to see another day. That's my case. Go ahead, Gillis.
Yeah. A lot of what you guys said. I just think he's the best quarterback in college football. I think if he goes 13-0, I think he's going to win the Heisman Trophy. I think if Ohio State, even like I think if they run the table the rest of the way, it's his. I don't see him playing at a level in this running game running at a level where it's like, oh well, they ran the ball for 312 yards against Michigan and they ran the ball for 247 against Indiana, and Julian didn't really do anything, and Marcel Reed cooked Bama and cooked Texas and blah blah blah. So yeah, I think saying if Ohio State runs the table, it's him. He opens it up to, I think, the rest of the field, not just Mendoza. Like if Ohio State loses to Michigan, or if Ohio State loses in the Big Ten title game to Indiana, I think that definitely changes the math a little bit, right? Like, and I don't think. What I don't want to do is say like, oh well, if they lose to Michigan but still somehow win the Big Ten or some kind of freaky scenario like that, oh well, then Julian's going to win it. I'm not going to go as far as you guys to say that the winner of the Big Ten championship game is going to win the Heisman, because we still do have, I think, it's lesser, but I still do think we have a quarterback battle in the SEC in this same way with Reed and Simpson brewing. And we got to remember, like, one of those teams is undefeated, and what happens if you get to the end of the year and Texas A&M's 13-0 and Ohio State's 12-1 and Indiana's 12-1, and one of those, like, they're just kind of weird permutations that I want to leave open. But I think if Ohio State runs the table, it's his, and the reason it's his is because he's been the best quarterback in college football. The ball doesn't hit the ground, and that's the thing. It's like when you have that type of accuracy and that type of completion percentage, it doesn't matter that you're hitting singles or home runs or not throwing a deep ball well or whatever, because you're just constantly gaining yards. And like there's a saying in football, like, can't go broke taking a profit, and they're taking a profit 4 out of every 5 plays with this kid.
I think what's interesting too is, I talked about Mendoza and his kind of Heisman moment and that drive that he led at Oregon. It almost feels like Sayin had like a miniature Heisman moment against Penn State, and it's interesting because Penn State's not good, but I think there were so many national people at the game, covering the game, and the YouTube TV thing probably went into it. It was the second most watched game in terms of ratings, I believe, this past weekend, that I think a lot of people actually watched and realize that this is not just a product of the receivers around him. That, like, Bo Nix has the all-time record for completion percentage in a season. It was 2023 at Oregon. It was 77.4%, right? And that, if I'm not mistaken, he was 13 or 14 games, because I think that was the year that they lost twice to Washington. So they had made the conference title game and obviously would have had a New Year's Six bowl. So they played 14 games. I think he would have started that year. So saying we'll have the task of, like, can you maintain 80% completion over 16 games in order to have the all-time record? But if you watch 2023 Oregon, you know what they were asking Bo Nix to do is not the same as what they're asking Julian Saint to do. I mentioned this stat on our Monday pod. He would have the best completion percentage in the country this year if you only took his passes of 20-plus air yards. And if you think that's just a result of Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, go on Twitter and look up the clip where he drops the dime. I think it was the one to Jeremiah Smith, where literally Jeremiah Smith, like, does not slow down, does not speed up. He literally just puts his hands out and Julian Saint drops it in the bucket. Like, we're talking about accuracy at a historic level in terms of percentage. We're also talking about accuracy at a historic level in terms of, like, watch the game and see what this kid is doing. And I think the Penn State game was kind of like this mini Heisman moment, because it was the first time I think a lot of people nationally truly watched and saw what Julian Saint is doing. And then now it sets up what's down the stretch here. His Heisman moment, like the true Heisman moment, can come in Ann Arbor and then maybe Indianapolis as well, right? So I think it's fascinating to see what the Penn State game did for him, because his numbers in that game were not far off from his numbers in a lot. Like, I don't know. I don't think Minnesota's that much worse than Penn State.
It's just national people are all over the place, right? All the time. Yeah. And that was to your point, the last time the national landscape watched Julian Saint was against Texas, when Brian Hartline had training wheels on it. So everybody, for the last 2 months, everybody's opinion who doesn't pay attention to Ohio State every single week has been, it's the McCord conversation of, like, it's not the quarterback, it's the weapons. And the world got to watch Ohio State and paid attention to Ohio State for the first time in 2 months and realized, oh no, it's CJ. It's both. It's the quarterback and it's the weapons. You said Bo Nix's percentage was what?
77.4.
Okay, and 28.1% of his attempts were behind the line of scrimmage. Julian Saint, 17.9 of his throws are behind the line of scrimmage. So, like, we're talking about the difference between a guy who's throwing a lot of bubble screens and a guy who's pushing the ball down the field at the short, medium, and deep levels versus just throwing a bunch of stuff behind the line of scrimmage where you can just eat up completions, which is why Julian Saint's yards per attempt is probably much higher as well. So that's the fact that they're running a pro-style offense and he's completing 80% of his passes is ridiculous, when he should probably be around 68 to 73% of his passes completed in those situations. What did you have a question, or was that it?
Yeah. No, I got one more question. Okay. And I know Brennan's got things to do as well. But
No, he doesn't. His professor doesn't like Wednesday classes, apparently. So we can go long. We're not actually going to go long today, but
yeah, I think this might be the last thing we talk about. But
yeah,
we talk about Saint Mendoza, Lucas Oil Stadium, playing for the Heisman and playing for the Big Ten title. The easy answer is the winner of the game wins the Heisman. Winning quarterback wins the Heisman. Is there a curve knowing what, like, if Mendoza puts up 28 points on that defense and it's in a loss, could he still win the Heisman?
I think you open the door for Ty Simpson or Marcel Reed.
Ooh, okay.
Because, like, the SEC championship game happens, I think, at like 4 that day. And if we're watching that game in Indianapolis, assuming that's where Ohio State is headed, and Marcel Reed throws for 250 and runs for 120, and Texas A&M finishes an undefeated season, and Marcel Reed just cooked Bama. Yeah, like I think that opens the door for more than just.
Well, let's take that part out of it, because that includes Texas A&M beating Texas, and, like, a lot of things got to go right. Like I'm saying, let's talk about this in a bubble. It's Saint versus Mendoza. One of those two guys is going to win the Heisman. And the obvious answer is the winner of that game wins the Heisman because he just beat the other guy. But if Ohio State scores 35 against Indiana's defense, and Indiana scores 28 against Ohio State's defense, which is a historic defense, is it as simple as the guy who wins it, or is there a path to? I think the most obvious path, like if Ohio State loses, Julian Sand's not winning. But if Indiana loses, could Mendoza still be part of this conversation? It's like, can you grade on a curve because of what this defense is?
It is.
Does
I
Julian
think
Sand play bad?
Yeah.
Because I think the answer to, because the thing you're essentially asking is, can the loser win the Heisman? And was the loser like Caleb Williams in 2022? Technically, I mean, he lost his last game of that season. Like, they lost in the conference championship game that year. But the field was so much weaker because CJ lost to Michigan, and the other two people who got there were Max Duggan and Stetson Bennett. So even I kind of agree with Gillis. I don't know if you can put it in that much of a bubble, because that's part of the math. Then was like Caleb Williams. It had already been established for weeks that it was kind of Caleb Williams or bust for USC, even if he was doing some miraculous stuff. So the moment CJ lost to Michigan, it kind of just went like, hey, Caleb, if you just do the thing you've already done for 12 games, win or lose, you're going to win the Heisman. Now, granted, he was playing on an injured leg, so that was part of the narrative there. I think if Julian and Fernando just kind of play to a draw, then whoever wins the football game is going to win the Heisman Trophy. But if one of them vastly outplays the other, but they lose, but it's very clear that, and maybe in this situation, it's only Fernando Mendoza because he's clearly playing for the inferior team from a talent standpoint. If Fernando Mendoza is significantly better than Julian, and we're going, oh, Julian is not what we thought. They just didn't play a bunch of good defenses, and what Ohio State did in week one was actually what they should have been doing all along, then I do think you open the door for Mendoza to win an individual award, because he is not the reason they lost. In fact, he is the reason they didn't lose by more.
I think if you had to say, if we are putting in that bubble, like if we have to, like I said with like what Steven said, I don't know if it's just those two, but like if it is this 1-2 bubble, I don't know how people. I just feel like people would look at it and say, well, one team and one guy won the game, and one team.
Yeah. Or this is how JJ backdoors it.
Maybe. And like I think
could go off against D'Angelo Pons, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, and maybe that's the case, but like I think realistically it's probably almost a 0% chance, because like I don't know, the scenario of like, like
football games are weird.
Yeah, it would have to be. It would have to be.
I'm not going to count out like Fernando Mendoza outplaying Julian. These are the two best quarterbacks in college football.
It would have to be.
Ohio State wins 35-28, but like, Brandon Ennis like returned a punt.
That's what I was thinking.
And a running back fumbled and someone returned for.
But I'm not going to discount the dude who's number 2 on my list of who's the best quarterbacks in the country outplaying the guy who I have number 1.
But it also has to be, in my opinion, like if Julian Sand goes out there and it's like 65% completion percentage, 60%, and he throws for 2. If it's a mid game from him and they still win the game, which I think is possible for Ohio State in that regard, like Julian Sand can just be like fine and they win the game. Like I think he'll, like, even if Fernando Mendoza is going out there and dotting people up, I don't know if that's going to be enough. Like I think Julian Sand has to be actively bad in that situation. I'm talking like completion percentage is down, throws like 2, maybe 3 turnovers, like has 2 or 3 turnovers. Like it has to be like blatant that, hey, Ohio State won the game because XYZ, and none of them were Julian Sand. Like I don't see a scenario where it's, 20 of 35 for 180 and no touchdowns, no picks, and the run game just goes nuts for Ohio State. But Fernando Mendoza throws for 380, and I still think Julian would win it in that scenario. I still think people would vote for the guy who won the game. It would have to be, God, Julian really sucked tonight.
So those are our ballots through 4 games. Well, not 4 games. 8, 9, and 10. I don't know how many games people have played. 614-350-3315. I had Julian Sand finishing at number 1, Ty Simpson at 2, Fernando Mendoza at 3, and Jeremiah Smith at 4. Stefan, you had...
I had Mendoza at 1, Julian Sand at 2, Ty Simpson at 3, and Haynes King at 4.
And Gillis, you had...
I had Julian Sand at 1. I had Fernando Mendoza at 2. I had Marcel Reed at 3, and I had JJ at 4.
So those are our Heisman ballots through the first week in November. 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. Thank you to all of you who joined us. The chat was live today, and there were some interesting conversations. Yeah. There was somebody who brought up Antoine Randall in the chat, which I thought was actually a really good comparison for Marcel Reed, to be honest with you, where it's like, I don't know if he's going to be a quarterback at the next level, but he could maybe play somewhere else. There was a lot of fun things going on in the chat. So thank you for keeping the chat live. Thank you for everybody who could join in. It's growing every single week, which I do like. And so we're starting to gain up some steam here as we get into the games that matter most here. So yeah, get the text 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that for Stefan Krajisnik and Andrew Gillis and producer Brennan. I'm Stephen Means. Talk to you guys later.